Keanu Reeves stood in the first-class line, dressed simply, a stark contrast to the luxury around him. A man watched him with disdain, unable to hide his arrogance. What happened next would leave everyone on that plane completely speechless and forever change one life. The Los Angeles airport was as busy as always, people coming and going, conversations blending together, and luggage rolling in all directions. In the middle of it all, a man stood calmly in the first-class line. That man was Keanu Reeves. He was dressed simply, a plaid shirt, worn-out jeans, and scuffed boots. He carried a backpack that looked like it had traveled the world with him. There was nothing flashy about him, and perhaps because of that, he went unnoticed. Yet anyone who took a closer look could sense something different about him. It wasn't just the way he dressed, but the calmness he exuded. He seemed like someone who didn't let the chaos around him affect his peace. While everyone else appeared rushed and anxious, Keanu stood there, tranquil. He observed everything around him as if soaking in the moment. He didn't mind the glances or the stark contrast between himself and the other passengers. Right behind him in the line was Victor Harding. Victor was the complete opposite of Keanu. He wore an expensive suit, polished shoes, and a cologne that demanded attention. Every movement he made seemed rehearsed, as though he wanted the world to know he was someone important. His eyes quickly scanned the line, and when they landed on Keanu, he couldn't hold back his comment. "First class, huh?" Victor said with an ironic smile. "You never know who might show up here these days." Keanu turned his head and looked at him, keeping his expression calm. "Yeah, the world is full of surprises." Victor frowned for a moment. He seemed to expect a bigger reaction, something that would confirm what he thought about the man in front of him. But Keanu stayed quiet, as if the comment didn't matter. Victor decided to push further. "Look, nothing personal, but you don't seem like the type who flies like this," he said, chuckling softly. "It's rare to see someone so casual in first class." The moment to board had arrived. The first-class line began moving forward, and Keanu and Victor, without exchanging any more words, followed with their tickets in hand. Victor, as usual, walked with firm, confident strides, while Keanu seemed oblivious to the commotion around him, walking at the same calm pace as before. When they finally entered the plane, the unexpected happened. Upon reaching his seat, Victor checked his ticket once more, and as he looked up, he saw Keanu settling into the seat right next to his. "You've got to be kidding me," Victor muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. He sat down beside Keanu and let out a low chuckle, as if the situation was a joke. Of all the places possible, it had to be here. Keanu simply looked at him with that same calm demeanor and gave a slight smile. "Looks like we're traveling together then," he replied politely. Victor crossed his arms, trying to hide his discomfort. It wasn't just the fact that he was sitting next to Keanu, but the thought that the man he had judged minutes ago was now sharing the same exclusive space as him. He couldn't quite explain why, but Keanu's presence unsettled him in a way he couldn't ignore. As the economy-class passengers finished boarding, Victor decided to strike up a conversation, but not in a friendly way. "So, what do you do for a living?" he asked with the casual tone of someone who already thought they knew the answer but wanted confirmation. Keanu, who was adjusting his backpack, looked up and answered simply, "I work in film." Victor raised his eyebrows as if surprised. "Oh, I see. Commercials? Small-time stuff." Keanu gave a slight smile and shook his head. "Something like that." Victor laughed. "I've always found it interesting how people try to find their place, you know? But sometimes certain spaces just aren't meant for everyone, like first class, for instance." Keanu looked at him for a moment, assessing the situation, but maintained his calm demeanor. "I think we all have our place," Keanu replied, "and sometimes it's exactly where we are." Victor let out a short laugh. "That's nice. Kind of philosophical even. But real life isn't that simple." Keanu didn't respond immediately. He just turned back to the window as if the conversation was over. But Victor wasn't done yet. "You know what?" Victor said, leaning slightly toward him. "You might be sitting here, but there are things money can't buy. Some places will never really belong to certain people." This time, Keanu didn't respond with words. He simply looked at Victor for a moment with an expression that combined patience and a certain firmness. It was the kind of look that said more than any words ever could. Victor, realizing his provocation hadn't had the desired effect, leaned back into his seat with a satisfied smile. He thought he had the upper hand in the situation, but the truth was that things were only just beginning. Victor was convinced he was in control, but Keanu's calmness hid something he couldn't foresee. With every passing minute, what seemed like a simple conversation was turning into something much bigger. With the plane already in the air, the in-flight service began. The flight attendant moved through first class, offering drinks. Victor made sure to be noticed. "A glass of champagne, please," he said with a confident smile. "Something that matches the exclusivity of this seat." The flight attendant, accustomed to demanding passengers, nodded with a professional smile. When it was Keanu's turn, he made a simple request. "Just water, please." Victor didn't miss the opportunity to comment. He looked at Keanu with that same air of superiority and let out a chuckle. "Water?" he asked, almost laughing. "Don't tell me you're going to waste the experience of flying first class with water." Keanu took the bottle the flight attendant handed him and replied calmly, "I'm fine with this. Sometimes simplicity is enough." Victor narrowed his eyes as if trying to decipher the answer, but quickly decided to push back. "Yeah, I guess that works for people who settle for less. Not everyone is born to enjoy the best life has to offer." Keanu raised the bottle and took a small sip, not responding immediately. Other passengers began to notice Victor's provocative tone, but since Keanu appeared unbothered, no one intervened. "Maybe the best is different for everyone," Keanu finally said with the same calmness as always. Victor didn't like the answer. He took a deep breath, trying to maintain control of the conversation. "Or maybe people who say that just never had access to what really matters. Some things are beyond the reach of certain people, you know?" The flight attendant, who was serving another passenger, cast a discreet glance in their direction as if considering stepping in. But she noticed Keanu was handling the situation well. "Well," Keanu responded with nothing more than a slight smile, turning back to look out the window. Victor, on the other hand, didn't seem satisfied. He wanted to provoke more, but was beginning to realize that Keanu was a difficult opponent to rattle. Victor was convinced he was winning the dispute, but for the passengers around them, his arrogance was becoming increasingly uncomfortable, while Keanu remained calm. Victor was about to face a reality that would completely change his views on people. The flight attendant returned to the section of the cabin where Keanu and Victor were seated. As she served another round of drinks, Victor decided to continue the conversation, or rather, his string of provocations. "You know, life is like flying first class," Victor began, gesturing with his champagne glass. "You work hard, earn your spot, and then you get to enjoy it. But some people, well, it seems like they're only here because they got lucky." Keanu placed his water bottle on the seat tray and finally turned to face Victor. His gaze was calm, but there was something different in it now, as if he was ready to respond more directly. "Luck or hard work, we all end up in the same place when the flight lands, don't we?" Keanu said, his tone serene but firm. The passengers around them, who had previously been discreetly observing, began to pay closer attention. The cabin was almost uncomfortably silent. A few exchanged glances, noticing the subtle clash between the two. Victor smiled, clearly trying to hide that the response had hit him in some way. "Well, I wouldn't say that. Some of us are simply on a higher level. Not everyone understands the value of being here." Keanu leaned forward slightly, crossing his arms. I think the value of being here, he gestured around the seat, isn't about what you have, but how you treat others.